Today we're going to be talking about looking at kind of this relationship between curiosity and its potential pathway to creativity within you and your students. Uh, Through those pathways, we're also going to be looking at ways that we can incorporate and integrate technology in a meaningful way. I like to talk a lot about technology. I'm a big kind of tech nerd, but I think that technology often works best when we do not know that it's there. So we're going to work on trying to make technology invisible today while using it in a meaningful way. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Brian. I am a geek. I'm glad that you laughed and did not throw things, which that was kind of like my middle school, high school experience of like being called names and being really kind of picked on and bullied. And now I get to like publicly say that I am proud to be a geek, which is pretty cool because 2018, very different than growing up in the 80s. I blame my parents for my super geekiness. They met and fell in love when they were taking a computer programming class back in the late 60s, early 70s. They were learning to program things with these kind of computer punch cards. My dad, around the time that I was born, he was actually working as a computer program operator. He worked kind of the third shift. He would go in and punch the cards, and then they got to feed into this very large machine. Every morning before he would come home from work, he would write my mom a love letter on a computer punch card. Recently, I inherited a stack of probably about 1,000 of these. This is one of them, which is a little kind of creepy when you like see love letters from your parents around the time that you were born. Super creepy when they are written on computer punch cards. So that's taken it to a whole nother level. Also, I blame them because I was named Brian. We don't have any Brians in the room. Do you guys know Brians? Do you have a Brian in your life? You've known a Brian before. Hopefully they spell it the right way. That's with an I and not a Y. I have a very strong bias against Brians that spell it with a Y. But with this I spelling, people constantly misspell your name, often on formal documents, which is really pretty funny. But it's always kind of this conundrum between being a Brian and also being a Brain. Now, I mentioned that I kind of grew up in the 80s, and I started kind of thinking about where did this term geek come from? Why was it, such a negative term? I'm a big pop culture fan. And this is a character that is known as the Geek. Anybody know what movie this is? This is 16 Candles. Glad that you got that one right, because most people say Breakfast Club, which it is not. So Michael Anthony Hall also in the Breakfast Club. And this character's name was Brian Johnson. And so I always kind of identified with these early roles of Michael Anthony Hall in the John Hughes films. Now, as a professor, I kind of have a lot of time just to sort of think about things, which is not necessarily something that every classroom teacher gets the opportunity to do. But I spend a lot of time thinking about kind of this relationship between being a nerd or being a geek. And so I started kind of looking at what do these terms actually mean? So I consulted my good friend Google, and I found out that a nerd was someone who is passionate about learning, being smart, or academia. Now, as I thought about that, I thought, that's pretty cool. That's maybe what our number one job is as teachers, is to help people become more nerdy. Because we really want them to be smart. We want them to be passionate about what it is that they are learning. Now, as I kind of looked and also consulted Google to find out a definition of geeks, they are defining geek as someone who is passionate about some particular area or subject, often an obscure or difficult one. So geeks are really nerds who have chosen to specialize in a couple of, really particular areas. Perhaps the greater the challenge, the more difficult it is, then the more that they're going to geek out about that. Now, if we look at the history of these words, the term nerd actually has not been around that long. It was first introduced in the book by Dr. Seuss, If I Ran the Zoo. And in the zoo, we would find a nerd was one of the characteristics or characters that we were going to see there. This does not necessarily look like the nerds of today. This looks like a very grumpy fellow, but indeed, he may be passionate about learning something. Geeks, on the other hand, have a much longer history. This is a term that's been really around since the medieval times. Geeks of that day were these sort of circus sideshow performers who would often perform really grotesque acts, such as biting the heads off of chickens. Now, that is a very particular area of interest that we do not necessarily want to encourage within our students. But nevertheless, that is where geek came from. I like to think of things in a visual format. I'll give you just a moment to kind of look at this relationship between nerds, geeks, and dorks and dweebs. So we've got a three-ring conception of nerdiness here. In the top left, we see the intelligence circle. So if we have intelligence and just social ineptitude, but maybe not so much obsession, we're going to be kind of in that dweeb category. Social ineptitude and obsession, dork, intelligence and obsession, geek, but right there in the sweet spot. When you're pulling all three of those things together, then that's when we're hitting the real heart of being a nerd. We're going to do one more. It's a quick checklist. You can play along for yourselves, your loved ones, maybe your students. I'll fill this out for myself, just in all open and honesty. Number one, probably wears glasses. Yeah, check. Lots of that going on. Above average intelligence. Yeah, check. Slightly obsessive in their interest. Yep, check. Likely to be mathletes, physics buffs, tech heads, or hackers, although they could just be evidence-based wonks. Check. Likely to get excited by machines or systems. Yeah, check. I threw this one in just for me. Fonts. Check. Do I have other font fans that are out there? Yeah, I love fonts. Possesses an enduringly goofy enthusiasm for their obsessions. Check. Probably like sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes, TVs, comics, films, and computer games. That's like check just all the way down the list. As we think about that, and we kind of think about all of those things being such a large part of popular culture in 2018, perhaps we're really living in a time where geeks have truly inherited the earth. It's pretty cool to be smart. And I think that we really need to look for ways that we can celebrate that. All of our slides that we're going to look at today will be available on my website after today's session. I do like to avoid spoilers as much as possible. So no peeking ahead. It's going to be just part of the magical reveal that comes out. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at kind of four different things. This morning, we're going to start out by looking at curiosity. We're going to take a break, then we're going to come back after our break. I'm going to challenge you to think or remember what it's like to think like a kid. We'll have lunch around 12, so we've got an hour for that. This afternoon, we're going to be developing new eyes, looking at the world with new eyes. And then we'll end the day by looking at ways that we can kind of stop just developing lessons and look at ways that we can create experiences for our students. So it's a little bit about me. I want to hear about you, who you are, maybe something that you're interested in, and a personal interest, and then what your role is as an educator. Okay? Full disclosure, I'm a huge Disney fan. There's a lot of Disney references in today's presentation. So let's start with Uncle Walt saying, around here we don't look back for very long. We keep moving forward, opening new doors, and doing new things because we're curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. A couple of years ago, not last year when NAGC was in Charlotte, but the year before that, the National Association for Gifted Children Conference was at Walt Disney World, which was a terrible place to go for a conference. It was horrible. No, it was not. It was totally magical. We got to hear from Alex Wright, who's an Imagineer, who has worked on various attractions within the park as one of their keynote speakers. And Alex talked about the importance of curiosity and creativity in his role or job as an Imagineer. And he said that curiosity is the root of creativity. Like if we weren't curious about things and kind of asked questions and kind of poked our noses around in things, that we would never be creative. And then instead of, kind of saying we're not going to encourage curiosity within our students, then what we need to do is to ask them to ask more questions. I want you to come with me back to the distant year of 2005. 2005, so many years ago. That was the year that I left the classroom and went to the University of Connecticut to start a PhD program. 2005 was just a fascinating year for what was going on within the world, and especially what was happening with technology. As you see, in 2005, we saw the introduction for the first time ever of YouTube. 2005. We kind of feel like it's been around forever, but it was only happened in 2005. Prior to 2005, the idea of streaming a video online or to a device did not exist. Yet it is something that we take absolutely for granted. Our students take it for granted. 2005 also really saw the rise of the Facebook coming into play. At that point in time, you had to have a university email address in order to join the Facebook. It had not gone public. But now, being a university student, I was right there on the forefront of starting to use Facebook. If we look at what was happening kind of in popular culture, 2005 saw the debut of Grey's Anatomy Season 1. 2018, Grey still having problems. 2005, we thought we saw what was going to be the last ever Star Wars film. Thankfully, Disney has righted that wrong, and we will have Star Wars films from now until the end of time. In 2005, our technology looked like this. This was as advanced as you could get for an Apple product. This was the iPod Video that had that kind of 1.5-inch screen that you could, after waiting hours and hours and hours, watch an episode of The Office on your device. I remember thinking, it's not going to get any better than this. In 2005, our cell phones that we take for granted, our smartphones, had yet to be invented. Those would not come along until 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone. Back in 2005, you were probably rocking out a Razor flip phone because that was as good as it got. It was also in 2005 that this guy, Steve Jobs, delivered the commencement address at Stanford University. This address you can now watch on TED, as a TED Talk, or on YouTube. You could stream that if you were so interested in doing that. It was in this address that Steve talked about the last Whole Earth catalog. He says that it was sort of like Google in paperback form, 35 years before Google came along. He says that it was idealistic and it was overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart Brand and his team had put out several issues of the Whole Earth catalog, and then they kind of felt that it had run its course. And so they put out one final issue, the last Whole Earth catalog. You have to remember what time it was. It was the mid-1970s, and on the back cover was this picture, this kind of faded Polaroid, of a photograph of an early morning country road. It says that it was the kind that you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. On that page were the words, "Stay hungry and stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Steve Jobs says that he had always wished that for himself. And now, as the graduates of Stanford were leaving to begin anew, he was wishing that for them. Stay hungry, stay foolish. This idea of being hungry really comes forth in this characteristic of curiosity, especially when it's combined with effort. In a meta-analysis that was conducted in 2011, the authors concluded that while intelligence is still the single most powerful predictor of an individual's academic success, that effort combined with intellectual curiosity rival that of intelligence alone. They suggested that having a hungry mind is a previously underestimated factor related to students' academic achievement. Now, in the fullest sense of the word, curiosity, it's really reflecting more than just this kind of fleeting interest. Instead, curiosity is a powerful driver for learning, exploring, questioning, critical thinking, creative problem finding, and problem solving. Einstein, who we generally hold up as the epitome of genius, once said that he had no special talent. Instead, he was only passionately curious. Now, as we think about our job as educators, as teachers, we really have the power to be dream builders or dream crushers. Now, if you think about teachers that you had throughout your lifetime, you probably had teachers that represented both of those camps. If you think about the greatest teacher that you ever had, then he or she probably inspired you, encouraged you to believe in yourself even when you didn't. They pushed you to try new things. On the other hand, probably every person in this room can relate the horror stories of having a dream crusher as a teacher, somebody who really did not encourage you and who discouraged you from trying to be your best. Each of us holds that power in our hands, and in every year that we're working with a new group of students, we have to ask ourselves, are we building their dreams up, or are we crushing their dreams to prevent them from living up to their potential? Sir Ken Robinson also talked about this in probably one of the most famous TED Talks of all time. He suggested that schools were maybe unintentionally squashing out the creativity and inquisitive nature of many of our students. That as they enter our schools, that oftentimes they come in these wild, creative, imaginative spirits, and by the time they get to middle school, that we have almost tested it out of them, that they're afraid to take those chances. So we have to find ways that they are comfortable in taking acceptable risks and trying out new things. Now, there's also research to suggest that that people that are curious actually live longer. Case in point, I'm just going to use the Curiosity Mars rover here. He's my good friend. This was a mission designed by NASA to last for only a couple of years. NASA is now trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do with Curiosity, because he is still living. He's extended well beyond the funding for that particular project, maybe because of his name. I like to kind of think that. We also have to kind of think about this kind of piece of warning our kids that with that phrase, curiosity killed the cat. It's almost discouraging them from really asking those types of questions. But instead, we really want to have them ask more and more questions and not condition them out of it. We're going to do a little, kind of a little quiz here. And you're going to use your devices, cell phone for this, or computer, whatever will get you to the internet. You are going to go to, let's see if I can do it this way. There you go. You're going to go to menti.com. So you can ask, when you first sign up for an account, then you can do as many sets of 2 questions as you want. They set it up for 2 questions per survey or presentation. If you refer a friend, then they'll give you 3 questions for free. So this counts as 1. Yeah. So you can do a Likert scale, and it counts as 1 because it's 1 slide. So for every slide, then that counts as 1, except for the intro slide that doesn't count as a question. Okay, cool. I like starting out with that piece just so I can kind of get a feel of where it is that you are. I think that really kind of part of curiosity is really presenting our students with those things that intentionally make them go, we have to provide those experiences where there is that kind of slight confusion, that it's not completely clear about what it is that they're looking at, and that they are asking those questions, and that they feel free to ask those questions. To kind of give you an example of how this might work within your classroom, we're going to go through, I think, a pretty simple and fun example. Part 1 of this is that I'm going to pose this question. This is our point to ponder. I want you to think about this. What does it mean to be stuck? So let's take some wait time. You're going to think about it, and then you're going to share at your table. Your students play video games, you think? all probably all day, every day if they could. If if they were given that option, then that might be what it is that they do. Um, I'm a big video game player from like way back, and still play a lot of video games now, um, which my wife does not necessarily totally love. She's like, oh, when you spend more time with me, I'm like, oh, wait, I need to get through this level. Um, so, so we work through that. Um, in the past several years, I've had lots of conversation with kids, particularly middle school students, about what they like about video games, specifically what they like about Minecraft. And I've really tried to understand Minecraft. I mean, as much as a video game player as I am, I still totally don't get it. Like, it's really ugly looking as a game. It's not necessarily a real game because there's so many different rules or lack of rules that are there. Um, and I find it incredibly frustrating as you're playing through, kind of in survival mode, because I die a lot. Uh, when I talk to middle school gifted kids, uh, all the things that I don't like about Minecraft and video games are exactly the things that they do like about it. They like that it's frustrating, that it's challenging, that you get to kind of make it into whatever it is that you want it to be, because it's exactly the opposite of what they experience in school. For them, school is, oh, you're told that you have to do this. School is supposed to be easy because that's how you show that you're smart. Um, you're not supposed to be frustrated. But when they're playing games, then often they want to be as frustrated as possible. Like if it's really frustrating for them and challenging, then that means it's probably a good game. Yeah, you get to start over. You get infinite lives. Not this is going on your report card. Suzanne. Hmm. Yeah, I talked with like a group, like an equal group, so with boys and with girls. Girls, with at least with 20 or so students that I worked with as part of that those kind of focus groups. Girls tended to play more of like the creative version of it, where they were wanting to build things. Because there's two ways that you can play it, like survival, where you constantly have to like survive through the night, versus building, which is more of a kind of the creative aspect of it. They like to build a lot more, although there were boys and girls, playing both ways. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of GT, good teaching. It doesn't just stand for gifted and talented, but it is good teaching. Um, and so I wholeheartedly believe in that. I think that um, a lot of times the gifted word gets a bad rap. Gifted education, I think, gets a bad rap for many of the reasons that are pretty obvious to us. That they aren't identifying a wide range of students, that those students aren't getting the opportunities and resources that they deserve. And you never know exactly what's going to happen. When I was a gifted teacher, then I would do a lot of push in, where we go into regular classrooms to work not only with my identified gifted students, but to work with all kids in the classroom. I taught in a Title I school in the metro Atlanta area, so we were like high poverty. I mean, we had, as a school, things like the system was working against us. But I loved going into those classrooms and providing these enriching experiences for all students, because the light got to go off for so many students that had never been challenged or never been given that chance to be curious about things. They had never, been told that they are these creative individuals. And I think that the more that we can give those opportunities to as many students as possible, then the greater chance it is that they're going to have to shine. At the University of Connecticut, I studied with Joe Renzulli, who's one of I like to refer to him as the godfather of gifted education. And he has kind of this notion that he promotes a lot, and that is that a rising tide lifts all ships. That when we have high expectations for all of our students, then everyone is lifted up in the process. We talked a lot about this from the student perspective. I think that we have kind of an understanding of what it means to be stuck from a kid perspective. Or probably also have like some understandings of what it means to be stuck from an adult or professional level. Um, Being stuck is can be physically stuck, can be mentally stuck, it can be socially stuck. Um, I just put this out there to kind of get you thinking about that term or that word stuck. We're going to go in a totally different direction as part of phase two with this, and I'm going to say that sometimes you are just stuck. We're going to watch a short video clip. It lasts about a minute. There's no real audio to it. You're going to see this scene and all of its stuckness. What you're going to do while you're watching this is that you're going to be using a visible thinking routine. This is probably one of my number one favorite teaching strategies because it requires zero preparation. I'm a low prep kind of guy. I like this one a whole lot. As you're watching this video, I want you to think of 3 words that come to mind. Since there's no audio in the video other than kind of hearing some wind blow, we aren't listening for words. There's 3 words that come to mind. We're going to use our Mentimeter to enter in those 3 words after the video is over. I also want you writing down, coming up with 2 questions. 2 questions that come to mind related to the video. And then the last piece, you're going to come up with 1 metaphor. 1 metaphor or simile that represents what you saw in the clip. So here we go. Okay, 3 words, 2 questions, 1 metaphor. When you have your 3 words, you can enter them into the Mentimeter. We're going to create a word cloud with those. So we'll take a couple minutes on this. Okay, let's spend a little time unpacking our 3 words, 2 questions, and 1 metaphor as a whole group. So now you've had the time to think about it individually. You've had some time to start those conversations at your table. Now let's debrief as a group. I really like Mentimeter for this feature right here, which is really nice, especially when you have a larger group of students. It just works really beautifully. So as with all word cloud generators, the word that appears the most frequently is going to appear the largest. So we had multiple people using the word frustration, probably a couple people using the word jam, a couple people using the word why, and then everybody else, probably all of the other words that were up there were listed as one time. When I've used this before with my students, they like to turn everything into a competition. And so they made up this whole rule that we're going to do the 3-word piece, and you have to write your words down. Your neighbor will check that you're not making up a word that is not written down on your piece of paper, and they would want to go around the room, everybody listing off 1 word that they had written down and you had to sit down if you repeated a word or you ran out of words. And then they got to be the word champion of the day. And for whatever reason, that was really motivating for them. You probably have students that would absolutely love that as well. Anything that you noticed about the word cloud that's been put here, or anything that you want to comment on? Yeah. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna like my mom and stepdad were just at Walt Disney World this past week, or on Tuesday, the day after President's Day, I was like, this is a really bad week for you to go. You do not want to go this week. Oh, but we're going to just go. They live in Florida, and so they just wanted to go and ride the Flight of Passage Avatar ride, and they didn't get a fast pass, and then I was like, you're going to have to wait in line for hours. And so they wound up waiting in line for 4 hours, but then she was like, it was totally worth it. Like I waited in line for 4 hours, and I would do it again because it was that good. So maybe it is worth sitting in all of that traffic. I'm going to say maybe not. I'm like, no, I would only ride that with a fast pass. Yeah, so let's go to kind of some of the questions that you had and start kind of going with some of those. Ebony. Yeah, is this a parking garage? Because it doesn't seem that there's like any movement going on really at all. They're just packed in there. Other questions? Yep. Is there a faster or an alternate route? Yeah, so there's like this, kind of like this road, which everybody's going in this direction while all these people are going. Where are they going? And why are they going there? What else? Oh, what's the answer? I don't have any answers. I Yeah, so this is I'll tell you what I know about this. This is a toll booth. This was in I believe just outside of Beijing. I think in 2014 is when this, and so it was not part of the Olympics, but there was a nationwide holiday, kind of similar to like our Fourth of July, and so everybody had like the week off, and so all of these people left the city. During that holiday, they installed a new toll booth um, that was not yet fully operational. And so this is kind of what happened as a result. Now, did anybody look for information about where this was? Okay, so you were like, did anybody use Google to try and find out additional information about this video? No. I've done this dozens and dozens of times using this video clip, mostly with teachers, less than a handful of times with kids. Almost every single group of teachers that I've ever done this with have not Googled the answer. Every group of kids that I have done this with, before they write their 3 words down, or even before the video is over, they are trying to figure out the answer to the question because they are curious and they want to know. But as teachers, we're following like those rules of like, he asked me to write down 3 words, 2 questions, and a metaphor. I'm going to. It was not my original plan. It's just something that I've noticed over time, that for whatever reason, kids use the devices that they have available for them.
Brian,
Yeah.
one interpretation of that might be that the kids think the answer is out there,
Yeah.
whereas the adults realize that their own answer is valid.
Yeah. True. I think that's a really a good way to look at it. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to find what this is, and we as teachers are more kind of looking at it perhaps more of a like philosophically, like, whoa, what is this that we're really looking at? Our answers are coming from within rather than seeing what's out there and available online. Yeah, it's really interesting. Right now, I'm working with a group of I'm teaching or supervising a group of junior to practicum students. They're undergrads, they're elementary education majors, and they're out in the field 1 day a week, and they're teaching. And I've been doing that for the past year, and it's really fascinating because there is this 50-50 split in these 21-year-olds that are very pro technology and would absolutely use it for absolutely everything that they could. And then there's this other group that is very hesitant. And they're like, do I need to use technology for everything? So I think that we like to think of it as kind of a generational thing. But my kind of recent experiences have led me to see that may not necessarily be the case. And it's been very eye-opening for me to just to watch those things. Other questions that we have about this video, or about the clip there? Things that you're wondering, things that you might be curious about? Did anyone get hurt? This lasted for several days. So you have to think about where did they go to the bathroom? How did they get food? Yeah, does somebody have a baby? What does that really look like? And again, once you kind of know a general location, like if you identified or searched for China traffic jam toll booth, then you could probably get some of those answers and find out more information about that. Metaphor, that was the last piece that was there. When I look at this particular image, we have that we can actually see the bottleneck in the traffic. So it looks kind of like a 2-liter Coke bottle as it goes up. I mean, it's one of those terms that we often hear. Oh, there's a bottleneck in traffic, but here we can see what is actually taking place with that bottleneck. Other questions that I've heard teachers and kids look at it. This image, they nobody talked about this, or at least gave this as one of their questions. Um, why are there so many white cars here? Yeah. And so then we can, oh, that's the number one car color in the world. It, keeps the temperature cooler on the inside. Um, I mean, I would think that they probably would have if they were there for that amount of time. We can also look at this from kind of an ecological point of view. What's the effect on the environment? We notice that it is not a very clear day, or maybe that is a clear day for that area. It is hard to tell. We're working up to a break here. I want to give you a couple of things to kind of do during breaks. So we're going to have a little bit of playtime. So I'm going to try and give you the green light. We're going to look at some technology resources. Now, when I give you the green light, I'm expecting that you are going to go in 13, 14 different directions with this. Fully aware of that. Everybody's going to go in do their kind of own thing. In that way, I think that people, especially students and especially gifted kids, are a lot like squirrels. We give them something, especially an online resource, and then they are all over the place. We have no idea where it is that they might wind up. I also think that it's kind of important if we want to cultivate curiosity within our students that we provide them with a garden-like atmosphere to do so. Now, if you think about the way that gardens are arranged, they are planted with purpose and intent. Professional gardeners or landscapers don't just randomly go out and throw seeds or plants everywhere. As teachers that are trying to cultivate that curiosity in our students, we need to purposefully plant those seeds of curiosity for them so that they can go out and explore. So I try to do exactly that. You can go to this website, which is going to be our link for today, which is right up here. And let's see if it's already there. Good. This is where all of the slides and resources will be posted. Right now, we're going to just begin to kind of explore the garden. I've got 10 different things for you to check out. Let me just kind of give you a little overview of a couple of these things. I'm realizing that I did not actually check on the links. Oh, good. They seem to be working. So that is good news. The first one on the list is Atlas Obscura. These are kind of interesting and random places that had been, oh snap, that's not cool, that have been mapped, just very kind of odd kind of places that you might begin to explore. A number of you talked about your interest in travel. Atlas Obscura is a great way to go about finding interesting places to visit as you might be traveling. Curious and Curiosity.com are two different services that provide kind of daily seeds, if you will, of curiosity for you to explore. DIY is probably one of my favorite resources for kids. Let's see if it will go here. It's thinking about loading. This is arranged into well over 100 different skill areas for you to go through and explore. It's kind of like a Boy Scout or Girl Scout badging type of system that you can see different challenges. If you complete 3 of those challenges, then you can earn a digital badge. There's something incredibly motivating about that piece. This one is totally where I'm probably going to lose most of you. This is called GeoGuessr. What they've done is to take the Google Street View images and turned it into a game. They are randomly going to drop you off at different locations on the Earth, and you are going to try and guess where in the world you are. So we can look at the buildings, we can look at the vegetation, and then you go over into the map, and we're going to guess. We're going to see if this will say, let's guess right here in Europe. We're going to make our guess. Skip that and continue the game. And we can see that I was almost 3,000 kilometers off. I earned 701 points. Um, yeah. So you kind of play around with it. It is definitely a rabbit hole. PBS Digital Studios has some great videos that they have put together as part of a YouTube channel. Um, Stuff that's not part of the regular PBS channel. But if you go through and you look at, um, let's turn that off. Um, some of their different shows, like Crash Course, they have that on there, and some different pieces that you might find interesting. The kids should see this as a great website put together by a parent of uh, two kids, where she collects different things, YouTube videos usually, that she finds interesting, but not necessarily educational, that she wants to share with her students. So they were not necessarily designed for education, but they are just fun things to learn. This comes from Merriam-Webster. This is Time Traveler. You can search for words by the year that they were introduced to the dictionary. So it gives you kind of a different way of looking at the development of language over time. Wonderopolis, this is a really great resource for primarily elementary students is how I would think of this, possibly middle school. It centers around this idea of there's a new wonder of the day. It gives you kind of a short text passage, usually a video clip, some activities, comprehension checkpoint. It is an activity that requires zero preparation, but that is all interest-based. Yeah, they finish early. They're going to go to Wonderopolis. You have to do nothing. It's there. And then Wolfram Alpha has just some really interesting kind of data collection pieces. So I'll let you take some time, explore the garden. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had some time to explore some different things. We're going to do a little bit of debrief on that. I want to hear about what you saw in our garden of curiosity. I did have a couple of questions regarding kind of some presentation type style stuff. So I wanted to answer those. I have a lot of perfectionism issues around slide design. So I did not mention like the things that I am passionate about, but that is probably pretty high on the list. I use Keynote because I'm an Apple boy. It's like Apple's version of PowerPoint. I don't use any templates. Everything that I do is just text-based and image-based. But there's nothing that I've done here that you could not also do in PowerPoint if you only have access to PCs. There are a couple of other questions about what you can do with Mentimeter. And so let me just kind of walk through a few of those things. This is the behind-the-scenes view. And so these are the different types of questions that you can add in. So you can do a multiple choice question, like if you want to have like a quiz type thing, or you wanted them to pick one item. You can do an image choice. We'll see one of those later this afternoon of what that looks like. There's the word cloud piece. As the words go in, it automatically generates the word cloud. We saw the scale piece with the first question that we did on how curious you are. There's an open-ended response. I think we have one of those this afternoon where you will be able to type things in, and it kind of runs through it lists them all out individually. I've never used this one, 100 points. I think you can kind of give point values to different categories until you get up to 100. So you can also do a 2x2 matrix, a who will win, kind of a competition type piece. There's also a Q&A piece that they've just added, and then some quizzes that are part of they'll let you try it out in the free version, and then there are, of course, premium options available as well. Questions about Mentimeter or about the Keynote presentation? Okay, cool. I'm always happy to answer those. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that you saw, that you are curious about, and that you can't wait to get back to school on Monday and share with your students and fellow teachers. Spend our next hour remembering what it's like to think like a child. Now, the way that we're going to do this, I'm going to introduce an activity to you that is based on the work of Roger Price. I forget the exact year or even decade that these were popular. I'm going to say probably in the 50s, early 60s. Roger Price created these kind of droodles, as he called them, these sort of napkin sketches of interesting things. And then he would give them a title of what he thought that picture would represent. So, for example, the one here on the left says Tower of Pisa as seen by a leaning tourist. Okay. And in this one, we have a cowardly fly making a landing. Okay. So he was kind of saying, hey, these are things that we might take a look at and consider what they might be. We're going to do a little activity related to droodles. So, okay, I forgot how I had this set up. You're going to have 1 minute. I'm going to show you a droodle. And during that minute, I want you to come up with as many different things that that droodle could represent. You're just going to jot them down on a piece of paper, type them out on a computer, whatever is going to be the best for your learning style and preference. Okay? 1 minute for the following image. Right? So let's see how you did. How many people have three or more? Show of hands. 3 or more responses. Okay? 4 or more responses. You can keep your hands up. All right. 5 or more. Okay, so we had how many? 5? 5. And Kelly? 12. Okay. So how many people had less than 3? Let's see that again. So okay. All right. So let's see how your responses compared to others. This comes from the National Geographic Channel show Brain Games. Okay, we're gonna punt on that. So what we would hear in that video is this. It turns out that the majority of people cannot come up with 3 or more responses within that amount of time. Who do you think this is true, except for one group of people? Anybody have any ideas of who that group of people might be that routinely come up with 3 or more ideas? Kids. Absolutely. So kids, much better at this. They come up with a lot more ideas. They're more fluent in their thinking. And the video clip that we're just going to imagine within our minds, there are some lovely 4 and 5-year-olds that are on there talking about all of the things that this could be. One of my favorite responses is that it is a pair of popcorn picker-uppers with a piece of popcorn that has been colored red. The 4-year-old girl is much more delightful and cute than I am when saying that. Other things are like, oh, it's an angry button, or it's some type of sandwich. So what are some of the things that you came up with in the? Good. Yeah. So when we do these types of activities, so there was a creativity research by the name of Paul Torrance, and we're going to do a Torrance activity after lunch. And Torrance said that we are able to kind of categorize people's creativity in 4 different ways. I'm going to name the 4 and then I'll explain what they are. There's fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. Fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. If you were like Kelly, then you were very fluent in the number of ideas that you were able to come up with. I'm going to guess that probably Kelly's responses were potentially less detailed than Ebony's responses. Ebony was kind of the other end of that elaboration piece. They are often opposites within creativity. You either come up with a lot of ideas, or you come up with one incredibly detailed idea. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just 2 different ways of looking at it. Originality would be coming up with things that are different than anyone else within the room. And so we could kind of go around and say, oh, can we use that three-word strategy where everybody's going to name something and not repeat what somebody else has said? A lot of you kind of said, oh, it looks like some type of sandwich, whether it's a hamburger or a tomato sandwich or a meatball sandwich. Um, Not a whole lot of people, I'm going to guess, said it was two popcorn picker-uppers and a piece of red popcorn that's been colored red. That is a really original response that also has a little bit of elaboration. Flexibility doesn't necessarily fit so well with this type of category, but that's when you are able to take something and put it to multiple uses, um, and are really kind of flexible in your thinking, and that they're not all sort of in that same vein of thinking. Probably, or what usually happens is that once you start generating a lot of ideas, that your ideas are very related to one another. If you were more flexible in your thinking, then you would have a lot of different ideas that would go across multiple categories. We're going to do this activity again. I'm going to give you a different prompt. And this time, what the folks at National Geographic as part of Brain Games have said, and indeed what creativity research has told us, is that if you want to be more creative, you should think like a kid. If you want to be more creative and generate more ideas, be more flexible and original, then you should think like a kid. Why are kids so much better at this than adults? What? They haven't been what? They haven't been programmed. Like, yeah. So experience sometimes can be a bad thing because it limits us and what it is that we think that it could be. Or kids, like 4 and 5 year olds, they're wide open with like these ideas of like, oh, well, this could be that red colored popcorn and popcorn picker uppers because I've maybe seen that before. So when we think like a kid, the world is, it's so new and it's so exciting. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I was lucky enough to see Star Wars in the theater as a young 6-year-old. I can remember that day probably better than almost any day that I can remember in my entire life. It was so exciting. I had seen kind of like the newspaper ads and the commercials on TV, and I begged my parents to go and to take me to see it. And so we went to the theater. I can remember sitting down in the theater. I almost, can remember what the seat felt like. And I was completely transported to this new galaxy. And I saw what I thought like the future was going to look like. It's like one day we're going to grow up and we're going to have droids running around and we're going to be flying in spaceships, all over the place. And then, by the time our Empire Strikes Back came out, then, I was a little bit older and it was really kind of grappling with this very, very pivotal scene. I'm going to assume that everybody has seen this film and everybody knows that Darth Vader, the bad guy, is Luke Skywalker's father. Okay? If I ruin that for anybody, I'm really sorry. Kids these days, like this stuff already exists. So they just come into the world and like they already know that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. So there's not that big reveal. Unless you are like some type of super parent. And we're going to look at this next clip. And I'm saying this like the clip's totally going to work. And I'm realizing that I'm doing this whole big setup. And the clip may not work. And the clip is not going to work. So we're going to just pretend like it does. So I will link these two things to our site so you can watch them at a later time. What you would see here is a recording of these two kids watching that pivotal moment seen for the first time. Somehow their parents had sheltered them from the truth until they were ready. And we get to watch on YouTube that truth revealed. Their faces are priceless. But we have to, I think, really kind of go and remember that that's really where that magic happens. We want to create those experiences for our students as much as possible. Now, kids ask a lot of questions. Kids tend to ask a lot of I wonder questions. I'm going to ask that you use Mentimeter to come up with some I wonder questions of your own. So we're going to do a different Mentimeter. This is going to give us some responses. It's got a different code this time. You're going to use the code 985049. And for the next 2 minutes, I want you to enter in everything that pops into your mind that you're wondering about. Your statement does have to start with I wonder. You don't need to type in I wonder, but we're just going to do as many I wonders as come into your mind for 2 minutes. One of the things that I would want to kind of encourage you to think about in using this type of strategy with your student is that it allows them to get all of those ideas outside of their head. It also gives you a little bit of insight into what it is that they are thinking. So you could use this really as kind of as a free write and see where it is that they want to go next. After you kind of come up with those ideas of, oh, hey, what's for lunch? What's for dinner? Are we going to have like recess this afternoon if like you're in that type of school situation? Then they start kind of coming up with things where it's like they might have like some, you know, philosophical, ideas, some wonderings about what's going on within the world. Maybe they're trying to troubleshoot your tech issues. I'm going to say it's like an HDMI kind of connection piece because I pulled it apart and then put it back together. And that seems to have solved the problem. So when is the next bathroom break? Anytime you want to go, you're an adult. So where are you going to be 1 year from now? Really kind of looking at the future. Who the next president will be. I think we're all wondering that. So if I should mow my lawn this weekend, probably so. So some of these are the kind of things that that you can kind of answer yes or no. Maybe you can have your kids kind of start having the conversations about that. But I think that this can really serve as a launching point for where it is that they go. I'm going to show this clip because it is priceless, and I do not want you to miss out on the opportunity to see this.
I am the Father. Not true. That's impossible. Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
We want our kids to be that excited about the lessons that we teach, right? I mean, if we could achieve even half of that, or even like a tenth of that, it would really be a pretty amazing experience. Other questions that kids tend to ask a lot of, especially when they're young, are those why questions. Like, why? I know as a fourth grade teacher, it got so bad 1 year that I banned asking why questions. I was like, no, just stop. We do not need to kind of go down that road. You might turn that asking of why questions back on them. And so there's this business or kind of creativity strategy that was developed by Satoshi Toyota. Anybody want to guess what company he started? Hint, it was not Sony. No, he started the Toyota Motor Company. Toyota, the myth goes that Toyota had this business principle that when his engineers and designers were confronted with a problem that they didn't know what the solution was and were stuck and did not know where to go next, then he would encourage them to ask the question why 5 times. They would ask why, and then they would try to answer that. They would ask why related to the answer to that question until they did this 5 times. After the 5th time, they either had gotten to a potential solution or identified where that problem was really taking place. I would encourage you to try that with your students. It can be really annoying. They will realize very quickly how asking why after why can be a little annoying, but can also eventually be a good thing. The other thing that I think that we can do is really kind of to take that I wonder piece, combine it with that why asking to really get at the root of that problem. Again, if we took one of your problems or things that you were wondering about up here, then asking why 5 times, we would get to that point where we had a better understanding of what our problem actually was. We have one activity which is going to lead us up to lunch, and that's the other most dreaded question that many of our students will ask, that we get often as teachers tired of hearing, and that is, what if? What if? And it could be any number of things. Kids tend to be really creative when coming up with what if questions. This idea or this activity is actually pulled from Pixar in a Box, which is a collection of storytelling lessons put together by the people from Pixar Animation Studios for Khan Academy. There's a whole series of lessons that are part of this kind of unit, for lack of a better term, that teach you and your students about the principles of storytelling that Pixar Animation uses when they're creating their different movies. So we're gonna kind of take this idea of what if and combine that with some storytelling techniques. You're going to identify 3 films that you would take to a deserted island. Now, before you ask the what if type questions, and I wonder if this is like what the rules are of this, somehow, magically, you are planning to be on a deserted island. You also have the whatever available technology it is to play the video or movie. So we do have to suspend our disbelief around that. So you will be able to take whatever 3 films it is that you want. You will be able to play them on some type of device. No, your batteries will not run out, so you will be able to watch them as many times as you want while you're on this deserted island. I want you to identify those 3 films, and you're going to put that in a word cloud. Okay, so you can see we have got a couple of Star Wars fans out there. All right, that's always good. And then a lot of individual responses. Now, I want you to think about those films that you listed, and I want you to think about why you connected with those stories. Okay, you're gonna come up with kind of like one reason for each of those, and then what, if anything, do these 3 films have in common, and how are they different? Okay, so take a moment or two to think about those questions, and then I want you to share with somebody at your table about your 3 films and those responses. Why do you think you connected with these stories? So you don't have to tell me what the movie is. So we're going to do something with that. But what connected you to each of these stories or films that you were looking at? So we're connecting to, looking at women and, these empowered roles, and that perseverance. What else? What connected you? Okay, looking at where it is that you are in life, and connecting on a personal level with those moments in time. Uh huh. Yeah. Yeah. So thinking of what it might be that you would miss the most. Um, yeah. Nobody on this list. Usually, when I've done this with usually with larger groups of people, almost always somebody puts that Tom Hanks movie Castaway on there. Like every time I've ever done this, then somebody puts Castaway on there. It's almost like a how-to video of like, I'm gonna survive this and get through, and make Wilson, and everything will be good. What else connected you? Anything else that kind of was that connector, that piece? And did they have anything in common, or did you have 3 completely different films? Yeah, because you have to kind of, as this table was saying, you have to decide, like, are we going to choose to watch something that is, very dramatic, that's, perhaps a very good film, or do we just want to forget where it is that we are? and have kind of our cares and worries taken away. We're going to take that piece and we're going to combine that with the what if. And fingers crossed that this clip is going to work. We're going to hear from a Pixar animator about how they use the what if question in their storytelling process.
Although our movies involve hundreds of people and take years to make, they all begin with a simple idea about some world and character.
What if there's life out there in the universe?
What if a rat wanted to cook hot cuisine?
What if our toys that are all around us actually were sentient and can come alive?
These what if questions invite the imagination into a story we want to explore. Let's hear how our artists use what ifs.
So what if questions kind of really drive that imagination?
The best what ifs are questions that they feel like a key that unlocks a door.
It really shuts down the logic part of your brain, and it lets you engage the dream part of your brain, and somehow it opens up the doors to imagination, or at least for me it does. And what if sort of seems to ask this question to let yourself wonder. So when it came to writing and directing Sanjay's Super Team, the thing that I came to first was what I wanted to say. What if we could finally see what my father was seeing in his mind with his spirituality and his faith? What if we could show that with vivid, three-dimensional Pixar technology to this little boy who worships cartoons? That was the big what if that I challenged the art department with.
At Pixar, these what ifs are not only fun, but they're a simple way to communicate a story idea and kick off our entire creative process. So it's important to be able to communicate stories in this concise way. In the next exercise, you'll reframe your 3 favorite films in terms of what if statements.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take your 3 films that you listed, and you're going to reframe them as what if statements. So then you're going to try and not include any character names or setting locations. That would completely give it away. But you're just focusing on the what if of the story that's there. Okay? So try that. And then you're going to see if other people can guess what your movie is. So we're almost ready for lunch. I just want to wrap this section up. So tell me how your what if questions about your movies. Tell me about your experience with that. Were you able to figure out the other person's questions? Was it difficult to write those questions? I'm just kind of opening it up generally. Yeah. Yeah. Now it's like, oh yeah, now I want to see. That sounds really interesting. I'm gonna watch that. If you do this with your students, most of them have kind of will probably have more common experiences, they will be more limited in their experiences of different films that they have seen. So they will probably generally say most of the same types of films. Other experiences with the what if question prompts? Our next thing is lunch. I want to provide just a closing statement here. It's really important for us to remember that what we're talking about here today, as I think that most of you have realized that this is not just for our kids, it's also for teachers too. Like we owe this to ourselves to be curious and creative. And I'll end the morning session with this quote from Henry Ford, who said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80, and anyone who keeps learning stays young. So here is to staying young. So, thank you all. We'll see you back 1 o'clock.